team is best set up for the next 5 years?
Number one is Oklahoma City. Shai took another jump. Josh Giddey has improved. Jaylin Williams looks like a future star. You don't just look at the players. Oklahoma City has a great coach, a great front office.
You guys, these comments were made about the Oklahoma City Thunder a little bit less than a year ago today. So I want you to keep in mind, this was before they exceeded everyone's expectations and made the 2023 play-in. Before the rise of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander into one of the more prolific scorers in all of basketball. And even not to mention, before the debut of two more immediate impact rookies that OKC has stumbled upon. And well, I guess I'll just say this. If what OKC did throughout the course of the entire 2023 season wasn't somehow enough to draw your attention to this team, some of the new faces and even some of the new things that they're trying to do on the court this season, being completely honest when I say this, it could be something that we have never seen before. But before we get into that, today's video is brought to you by our friends at DraftKings. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the most wonderful time of the year, okay? Basketball season is finally upon us once again, and to make the most of it, we're partnering up with our friends over at DraftKings to get in on the action. Because for any new customers who download the DraftKings fantasy app, use promo code HDIGEST and deposit at least $5, you can play free for a share at millions of dollars in prizes. It's simple. To play, just draft your roster, select who you think will stack up the most points for their in-game performance, and claim your shot at some of the top prize payouts. So give yourself something more to watch. Again, just download the DraftKings fantasy app, use promo code HDIGEST, and with your first deposit of $5 or more, play free for your share at millions in prizes. That's promo code HDIGEST only at DraftKings. Okay, so to get back on topic with the Oklahoma City Thunder, this is a team that when looking back on last season, whether it was offensively, defensively, or even overall record-wise, I mean straight up, they were the true definition of a middle-of-the-pack team in just about every regard possible. Granted, again, almost nobody, when looking at the preseason predictions at least, expected them to be this far ahead of schedule in their rebuild, but with the sustained winning that they found last year, coupled with the superstar breakthrough that we're continuing to see night by night from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the potential future DPOY they've seemingly found to man the middle of their defense in Chet Holmgren, or even just the drastic improvements that they've seen across the board from their entire young core. And with all of this, sure, their preseason expectations are much higher this season when compared to last, but I don't think over a week into the season that anyone would have predicted, both statistic-wise and film-wise, that these guys would look like one of the more dominant teams in all of basketball. I mean, you guys, a team with this little of experience ranging across the entire board of their roster from top to bottom, I can't say it any simpler than this. They just shouldn't be this good, okay? It's insane. So some of you might be asking, how exactly are they doing it? And well, there's a lot of factors, but one of the biggest ones has got to be the addition of this guy. Now, when you sit down and take a little bit of a deeper look into the style and the scheme of basketball that the Oklahoma City Thunder like to play, I really don't think there's a better fit they could have asked for than Chet Holmgren. Because clearly, as some of the film can testify to this, he's another guy who, despite his inexperience, he's been making an immediate and a drastic impact on both the offensive and defensive sides of the ball, and the numbers can testify to that just as much as the film. But again, most of us out there knew what Chet Holmgren was going to be capable of doing at the professional level, and it was more so the question of how specifically head coach Mark Diagneault and Oklahoma City would use him. And the way they're using him, it's kind of terrifying. For example, when you take a look into how this team was so successful in the 2023 season, it was more or less simply a matter of their top guys in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Josh Giddey, Jaylin Williams, etc., taking what opposing defenses would give them most often. And well, being a team that lost what was going to be their #1 post presence before the season even began, pretty much every defense said, you can't score in the paint, we're going to face guard you and force you to shoot from the outside. Which, as we saw last season, wasn't necessarily this team's strong suit. So what did OKC do to retaliate this? Well, they drove it into the lane far and above any team in the entire league. Like, it wasn't even close. Because to keep a long story short, instead of falling into the trap and taking the shots that opposing defenses wanted them to, this offense has some of the best ball movement in the entire league, and they will always look to get the most efficient shot possible, which in most situations, both last season and this season, tends to be by driving to the lane. But also, in case some of you guys forgot, the biggest difference is this year, they actually have a post presence. And believe me, you guys, when I say that, I am not trying to diminish any of OKC's other bigs that they have on the roster, like J. Will, Poku, Ousmane Dieng, etc. But clearly, as we've already seen, with Chet's ability to be the pure definition of a 3-level scorer that effectively stretches the floor better than any other big on this roster. And yes, you guys, even though the historic numbers he's putting up to start this season probably aren't going to hold their ground as time goes on, I mean, even if you cut that percentage in half, he's still making the life of every single one of his teammates 10 times easier when he's on the floor. Because whether it's the gravity that he pulls towards himself when spotting up from the outside, the new pick and roll threat that he introduces for every single ball handler on this team, or even the fact that because of his post presence, he's creating more wide open looks from the perimeter than this team has ever seen. And I mean, sure, when you do look at the numbers, this team isn't necessarily taking a lot more threes this season, but I will tell you, there's a reason that they've become a lot more efficient this season when they've been taking them. And also, that's definitely not to say they've gone away from their ways of driving to the paint, because they're still leading the league in that too. But what about how Mark Diagneault utilizes the rest of this roster? Because I mean, honestly, just speaking in general, it's one of the wildest offenses we will probably ever see. Because to start, while I know a lot of people will just simply refer to things like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's assists per game count or his usage percentage to say that he is probably the traditional point guard of this team if you had to pick one. But again, if you've watched this team up to this point this season, you can see that they essentially run a 3-man revolving door in terms of who's facilitating the offense. And whether it's Shai, J-Dub, or Josh Giddey taking it up the floor to either create for teammates or find their own shot in isolation that they can all do, no other team in the league has a 3-way split of production in this regard like this, and you can see it, defenses simply don't know how to counter it. And even when you consider that all 3 of these guys can essentially play either in the back or the front court when they are in an off-ball situation, Oklahoma City is able to run rotations and hunt mismatches unlike any other team that we see. Because again, aside from these 3 who are extremely versatile for Mark Diagneault's use, this lineup is very guard heavy. But when you consider that the rest of this rotation is rounded out by guys like Lu Dort, Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, and even the new rookie in town in Cason Wallace, who all fit seamlessly into this offense as off-ball moving players and pick-and-plug outside shooters. And guys, don't even get me started on the defensive monster of a team this is turning into, just with the new additions of Chet and Cason in itself. Point being in all of this is that yes, it is still extremely early, and a small sample size like this is definitely not going to tell the entire story. But on the other hand, if it's at least a preview of what's to come from some of these young guys in the near future, the rest of the league might just be in for a new surprise team in the 2024 playoffs. I don't know though, we'll just have to wait and see. Nonetheless though, you guys, I'm also extremely curious to hear what you have to think from everything that we've seen out of OKC up to this point. So be sure to let me know in the comments what has surprised you the most, either from the offensive or the defensive side of the ball with this team, and if you had to predict what their record will be heading into the 2024 playoffs. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate y'all more than anything, and I will see you guys in the next video.